I could be anything for you, I would be your cure. I'd pour light into your wounds to soak their poison into the potions of love, into the golden and smoldering potions of love.
So help has arrived, and we're very
And
grateful.
as their darkness drained, I would tear apart your cage, remolding the bars that held you into your destined wings, into your destined wings, flying above us all in your destined wings.
Absolutely gorgeous. We were the only people parked.
If from your flight you return, I would have sewn a blanket for you, cut fresh from the curative fabric of spring. But hopefully you'd fly off to that destination you were born with, the one they tried to steal from your soul. That destination you were born with, the one they tried to steal from your soul. If I could be anything for you,
I'd like to say a huge thank you to
I
everyone
would be your cure.
who's come out and supported Michael and Cafe Lockdown to continue doing good.
If I could be anything for you, I would be your cure. I would tear apart your cage, remolding the bars that held you into your destined wings, your destined wings, your destined wings, your destined wings. Fly, just fly. Realize all that is holding you down. The concepts. If I could be anything for you, if I could be anything, I would be your cure. I would be your cure. I would be your cure. If I could be anything for you, I would be your cure. I'd pour light into your wounds to soak their poison into the potions of love, into the golden and smoldering potions of love.
Okay, we got a big one tonight. I'll bring in my partner in crime, the Oost.
Cool.
How you doing there? See you
Thanks
back in
for
your
having me,
favorite
Todd.
universe. Yeah. The thing got a B badge. B badge is available. Oh, here, B badge. Our shit stirrer spoons, because we got two powerful women on today. So I don't think we're going to get a word in. There's and let's start. First off, we're going to go with Roz Nealon Cook, the fiery
Hello.
former
Hello.
psychologist.
Lovely
And
to see you guys.
Thank you for doing this. I think it's a really important conversation, actually. And then
Yeah.
Sandra, and I'm going to put you ladies up
Hi.
the top. Hey, Sandra, thanks for coming on, and I really admire your courage for doing this, but I think it has to be said. So, how would you like to begin? I'll maybe start with Roz. How would you like to begin, Roz?
Well, I think we could, should start by saying this is not a conversation we are overly joyed to be at. But as you said, Michael, I think it's such a critically important one for people to hear. And, when I was watching your intro there, and I was smiling at so much of it until you got to the Forest of the Fallen, right?
Absolutely.
And that's the one that always stops our hearts. And it's the reason we keep fighting. It's the reason we have to keep speaking up, I believe. So really, what Sandra and I are hoping to do tonight, we've got this new code of conduct that AHPRA has, for unknown reasons, decided to bring in for psychologists. It goes live tomorrow. And, there's been huge amounts of criticism and massive concern and fear about this. So really, we've we could talk about this for a week, but Sandra and I've spent a lot of time sort of picking out some key parts that we wanted to talk about, and it's where do we start? Are you going to bring up the slides, Michael? I mean, the first piece I wanted to talk about.
Yes.
They're just processing now, so just maybe talk just for a few minutes, and it should be there. Since all
right,
there's someone here wants to say hello from Germany, Sandra Seiko.
Oh, Sandra Seiko. Oh, this beautiful woman, Sandra Seiko. So
hey, Sandra.
She runs the Free Rhino Fuel Mic campaign.
Oh, Sandra, I've been trying to get in contact with you. I've been sending you messages. We did an interview with Ryan. I think we did it twice. I know we did it once. We'd love to have you on. We'd love to hear from you. So if you want to get in touch, cafelockout@gmail.com. We'd love to have you on and have an update. Thank you, Sandra.
And she, while you're still processing the slides, I hope it's okay to say, Sandra, she also is a psychologist, former psychologist. I'm not sure exactly what nomenclature she has to use. Trauma psychologist, highly experienced, also mandated out or, lost her license in Germany for speaking out, sorry, not speaking out, but not taking the jabs. So she now drives a taxi and puts right, as we know so many people do. I'm applying for jobs at the hardware shop at the moment. I mean, we just have to stay
the local balance, right?
That's right. With that, devotes and gives of her free time, huge amounts of her time to supporting Rainer, which is, he's been in jail for 2 years now, and it's an absolute travesty. It's just disgusting. So Michael, she's amazing. So thank you, Sandra. You really from Australia, we love you. You're amazing.
Michael, we should play the interview we did with Rainer. So that people remember what a brilliant, and important man he is, and he's one of our tribe who's been left behind, and we're not going to. We don't want to leave him behind.
We will not. Yeah, he's so beautiful. He is.
He was so lovely. He was so lovely with us. He just called and said, "Can I come on?" I think I was in Portland, and I was running to try and find a pub with Wi-Fi so I could do it in this back of a pub. And remember, Paula kept falling out. You were talking. I'm going, the nightmare. And he was so calm and this. Yeah.
He's an outstanding human being, and I think the really important piece is he has been forgotten. And not only has he been forgotten, but because there was all this malicious bullshit. Can I swear?
Yes. It's required. It's required at the cafe.
It's a cafe. not club grubbery.
You know, making up all these charges, false charges of embezzlement, that sort of thing. And a lot of people, even in the resistance community, believe that's true. So that's a whole other piece, and maybe we can, definitely do another interview on that, because we're getting involved with the Lighthouse on that. So
before we start too, we're streaming live now to a Telegram page. It's called Cafe Lockdown on the Run. That's there. We're doing that because we're expecting to be leaving Facebook soon. So there's that there. And we're also streaming to Odyssey, which is a blockchain platform, very hard for them to censor. And we're streaming there now too. So in the next few weeks, we might be migrating away from Facebook, which is interesting because I still remember my brother calling me up going, "You heard of this thing called Facebook?" Going, "No." And that was like 30. I've been on it ever since. Made businesses on and stuff. So it's really quite interesting to finally go, okay, we're leaving it.
Yeah.
You know, and we're on YouTube too, yeah. But how long?
Oh,
we
it's
don't
still
know.
on YouTube. Well done.
They let us back on recently. They'd taken down 6 channels. We never bothered going there. And then they sent me a thing saying, "Do you want to do a review?" And I thought, yeah, sure. And they said, "Why should we let you back on?" I said, "Because I'm good." Because I thought, they're not going to do it. And then they put me back on. I was like, oh my God. So we're precariously on YouTube.
Yeah. And just to don't forget to mention, Michael, what was the ban you had from Facebook? Was it 900 years or something insane?
3,649 day, a 3,649 day restriction. They didn't take the page down because that would have made me a martyr. So they just gave me a 9 years, 11 months. So it's a Facebook gulag. Yeah.
Despite the fact they came out.
Smoke cigarettes made out of toilet paper and stuff, and dream of the old days when we could share cat videos and stuff. That's what we did.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right. Have we got those slides up now?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So let's go to.
Before we do, Paul and I if we have questions, we have our shit stirrer spoons. Okay? So we don't hit the flood.
Okay. So let's go to the next slide. Okay. All right. So I've had so many practicing psychologists contact me about what's going on with this new code. And this really is one of the biggest things that is hugely concerning, because this new code basically destroys any boundary between psychologists in their clinical role, and then being a private citizen. And, as with all these sort of bureaucratic documents, it does this through, a little sleight of hand. And if you see here, we've got section 8.4, and it says the board says that even private comments may be regulated if they could become public. Yeah. And so really what we're looking at here is a complete destruction of one of the most, I suppose, fundamental protections we should have in free society, the right to think and speak as a private individual without the state monitoring you. It should go without saying. And obviously, psychologists don't become, they don't stop being citizens and private individuals when they go home. They don't suddenly, surrender their autonomy, I suppose, just because they have, some AHPRA policy thought policing them. Yeah. And the new code is saying the opposite, that psychologists' private life, their private speech, and even their beliefs might fall under regulatory control if someone overhears what they're saying or shares what they're saying. It's not professional standards. I mean, this is fully Orwellian. I'm sure that sort of is clear. And not only, I suppose, is this morally wrong and ethically wrong, it's actually illegal, because Australia is a ratified signatory to the UN International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and that was ratified by the UN General Assembly in December 1966, and Australians adopted it in 1976. So if you go to the next slide there, Michael.
Yep.
And you can see from this, Article 19, it's crystal clear. Every person has the right to hold opinions without interference. You have the right, as it should be, of course, that you have the right to seek and receive and impart information and any ideas of any kind through any media. And for AHPRA to turn around, they can't override that with some sort of subordinate document like this code. And I even heard, one of the people that I heard from is a very young psychologist. And of course, the young psychologists who have all their massive university debt and so much to lose, he's decided to pull out of these regular Zoom peer discussion groups he's been going to for years because they're being recorded. And
incredible.
Right. And this person is deeply concerned that maybe a recorded comment might become public and expose them to these sort of new thought police rules. And it's not paranoia. Yeah. And it's, it's a really legitimate concern. So really, this isn't psychology anymore. It's the state inserting itself into the internal world of individuals. And a profession that's already traumatized by censorship during COVID, and we'll talk more about that later. And I think really the critical point for everyone to take on board here is that no profession, whether it's psychology, medicine, or otherwise, retains any legitimacy when its members lose the right to speak freely as citizens.
100%. Well, that's what you go to a psychologist for. I go not only just for the training, but for who you are as a person. What have you learned? So you put them together, and we want guidance. We don't want you to tell me the answers, but I want to help me with guidance, not this.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
I'll retweet it, Paul, if you don't mind.
The code basically tells us that as psychologists, we're never off duty.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's just ridiculous. I mean, how can you do that to people? And I mean, this code, they first sort of put it out, and we'll talk about that more later, in 2023. Interesting timing, right? But to sort of overreach in this way, it's horrific, I believe. So the next one do you want to say anything anymore?
No, I'm just agreeing with you, Roz.
Yeah. Look, the next one really is, so this again sort of delves into what psychologists are allowed to communicate publicly and what restrictions are put on there. So the new code basically says that psychologists may only make public comments using either contemporary peer-reviewed research findings or their demonstrated experience or expertise. And, to maybe a layperson, this sounds neutral and fairly sensible, but the reality of it, when you dig into it, is it's speech control, right? Dressed up as standards. And we'll get to the peer-reviewed research in a minute, because that's massively problematic. But let's, look, there's this sort of board's built-in escape hatch. So the code says, well, it's not just the peer-reviewed literature. Psychologists can speak based on their expertise. But that phrase in itself, it's undefined, it's completely subjective, and it's entirely at the regulator's discretion. And that's where it gets incredibly dangerous. And I think that it's like a get-out clause. It's the usual regulatory optics built in to cover their asses. Because in practice, as we've seen, compliant psychologists have expertise accepted, but dissenting psychologists have their expertise rejected. And
absolutely, good point.
Such a vague clause, and it's used. These sort of things are used to persecute dissent and to protect obedience. And once you take this sort of pseudo loophole,
listen to what you just said, Roz. Just pause to what you said. To punish dissent and to what did you say? Celebrate or
no, punish dissent. Yeah, and to basically reward compliance, obedience.
Reward obedience. Wow.
Yeah,
It does.
and
Yeah.
so once you get rid of that, because it's nonsense, so then we get back to the peer-reviewed research, because that wins the day. And there's, again, we could talk for hours just on this piece, but the two pieces I wanted to bring up, and this is the slide here, that, you know, the scientific method, anyone trained in the sciences, psychologists, doctors, every single health professional should recognize that this is completely anti-scientific, because all of us were made in first year university to do all these courses in what constitutes science. And they're foundational. And really, for AHPRA to write something like this, it's like they've forgotten. So Karl Popper, and we're all taught about, you know, Professor Karl Popper and his principle of falsifiability is foundational. And, you know, it's not even rocket science. It's like science progresses by testing claims, right? You aim to disprove them. And it must allow challenge, because no scientific is ever final, right? Maybe pure maths, I don't know, you know, whether that would ever change. But really, beyond that, it's just conjecture, and every claim has to be open to refutation. You know, science evolves, and we've seen again and again and again through history that it frequently reverses. You know, if you think about Galileo's argument for heliocentrism, that the Earth orbits the sun, and he was punished and put under house arrest because he went against, you know, the evidence-based consensus at the time, so Ptolemy, and, you know, he tried by the Inquisition, placed under house arrest, but ultimately, of course, found out to be 100% correct. And the same thing happened during
Galileo wasn't peer-reviewed, Ros. He wasn't properly peer-reviewed.
No, so, that's right.
You know, the appropriate stakeholders had judged that Galileo was had ideas that could cause harm, and as a result, he had to be put away for the sake.
Right. Yeah.
What's Greek for conspiracy theorist? Anyone
know? Sorry?
I'll look it up. What's Greek for conspiracy theorist? Can I just say, to get a modern story, when I was on the Parliament steps in Melbourne, we were there every day. We called it the Steps of Solace, because all these people from Melbourne were coming and sitting there, and they were in shock because they had to get mandated, and they didn't know what to do, and we were the only people who would listen. You'd have all these old ladies there who were just listening to these struggling people. And one young girl, I remember, she looked like she wore op shop clothes. She looked a bit of a geek. And I sat next to her, and she was only young. And I said, "Are you okay?" And I remember this, what she said to me: "I'm a chemistry student. I literally just have to sit my exams to pass my 4 years, whatever. And they won't let me sit the exams and start my PhD unless I get vaccinated." And I said to them that I just have questions. And they said to her lecturers, in this case, you don't ask questions.
That's it.
And her parents were saying the same. And I said to her, you're a scientist. Science is one big question. That's all it is. Your job is to ask questions. That's it. And they're telling you now, after a 4-year course, don't ask questions. That's where we are scientifically.
Yeah. It's disgusting, you know, and as soon as you say there must be conformity to this peer-reviewed research, you've exactly taken out any chance.
What consensus opinion is.
Right? You've taken out early warning, any minority scientific viewpoints like Galileo's are just binned. You know, you can't critique. And for psychologists, it turns what they can speak about into institutional obedience. It's not science anymore. And so, you know, aside from what it does to the scientific method, and you can go to the next slide now, you know, the peer-reviewed literature, as we call it, has a really dark history. You know, it is not clean. And sadly, the public and still the majority of health professionals treat peer-reviewed literature as some sort of holy writ, like it's gospel, but it isn't. You know, and we've seen it again and again with bias and sponsor influence, political pressure, editorial filtering. You know, it's groupthink, isn't it? And, you know, the peer-reviewed literature was never meant to be a muzzle. And I put this quote up from Marcia Rangel because it's so on point. You know, she wrote this, 2009, which is whatever it is, 15 years ago. She'd been the chief editor of the New England Journal of Medicine, which is considered to be the top. It's an impact factor #1, we call them, journal. And she ultimately literally just walked away in disgust and said,
and good on her.
Good on her. And I remember hearing this at the time and thinking, all right, that's being dealt with. You know, everyone will get it now. No. And there's been so many similar write-ups. You know, her speaking out wasn't an isolated event. So really, when a regulator like AHPRA says your speech must align with this agreed or, you know, mandated research, they're not protecting truth. They're weaponizing what's known to be a corrupt system. You know, it freezes science.
Aren't they like reviews for theaters or reviews for films or reviews for an Airbnb hotel? I mean, let's be honest, that's all they're worth now. And most of those reviews are false, done by cousins and aunties just to try and get people bums on seats for theater or someone free Airbnb. I mean, we can't believe them anymore. They're just reviews.
No, and that's such a brilliant point, Michael, because what we actually need is, what's it called, TripAdvisor or those sorts of things. And we need that for journals. And I've actually recently joined and been asked to be a ambassador or spokesperson for, so Children's Health Defence have put up this new thing called the COVID Index. And basically what they're trying to do is get a really robust database of all of the, you know, alt narrative COVID data, articles, research, the press as well, because I'm, you know, you guys all know that so much of what was on government websites and newspapers has been deleted from the Wayback Machine. So I've suggested to them, well, look, as well as just putting the alt narrative, let's get the, you know, official narrative up there, and let's say, okay, so this article who was it sponsored by? Who were the stakeholders? You know, what was going on? Because it's really important for people to see just how dirty this elite, rarefied peer review literature is.
Yeah, I was going to ask Ross, who's when they limit acceptable discourse to peer reviewed, you've got to ask, well, what is the effect of that? Who is it that's conducting the peer reviewed research? Who is funding it? Who are the stakeholders? How is that limiting the discourse of the profession? And I'm sure it does, because I know in other branches of medicine, peer review has absolutely failed to stop the reproducibility crisis. It has completely dropped the ball over COVID research, and
Totally.
It shouldn't be any different here. It's quite disturbing, isn't it?
Disturbing. Yeah, look, absolutely, Paul. And I remember what you said in the tipping point roundtable we did when you talked about your time as a student anesthesiologist and how you were actually then taught. I mean, do you want to talk about it, to critically review rather than?
Well, it's quite famous. When you begin medical school, they often say in your first year, half of what we're going to teach you in the next 5 years is wrong. We can't tell you which half. And the idea, and suddenly we've become so dogmatic that we have a known truth which is fixed. This, you know, so this is it's very ossifying. If we're going to be stuck in a dogma, we can't question it.
Was good. Ossifying. What does that mean, Paul?
It's like to become a rock, you know, just immobile.
Yeah, that was like the Silence of the Lambs guy going oodles. Remember when he did that in The Silence of the Lambs? That was
Never
great.
watched.
That's a great word, brother. Fine. Yeah.
I can't watch scary stuff like that.
Yeah, it's pretty scary. Not as scary
We'll
as
jump
this.
over to Sandra now. She's going to talk about, because guess what? The new code doesn't leave out vaccines.
Oh, it's hard to believe, isn't it? Yes, unbelievably, the new code reopens the vaccination issue. Section 9.1 actually instructs psychologists to understand the importance of immunisation and to take reasonable and effective steps to prevent transmission. So, on paper, that may sound benign, but now we've all lived through COVID, we know it's anything but benign. This effectively imports workplace or government vaccine policy into the code of conduct. Is it creating a backdoor mandate? Despite AHPRA saying that vaccination is not a condition of registration.
Wow.
And why exactly is this relevant anyway to the practice of psychology? Why do we
100%.
need to understand the importance? We're not doctors. It's not part of our PD. So why is it so important to AHPRA?
It'd be interesting.
I mean, it's nonsense. They should actually, if they're talking from the COVID perspective, they should say, understand the importance of synthetic gene transfection in your patients and adhere to the current genetic transfection expectations of the regulators. I mean, because, you know, it wasn't an immunization as we know it. And you're right, it's not, you don't go generally to your psychologist and say, I was wondering about the you know, my childhood schedule, you know, and whether I should do it in 3 months or 6 months. What do you think? Because it's not actually part of the, so it's quite insidious what they've done here. And what worries me about this is during COVID, they had a guideline that came up about giving sedation to enable the COVID vaccination for people who were anxious. You know, they were worried it might kill them, say, or give them myocarditis, or any of the things that we now know it can do. And they were saying, they were playing it off as if it was an irrational thing. And they were talking about guardianship, you know, the appropriate. So they were trying to play vax hesitancy as a mental illness. Okay. And this is why I'm very sensitive to this particular issue, because it opens the door to not just tyranny, but to crimes against humanity.
Right.
Okay?
Absolutely.
I got evidence of that. I just got evidence of that. I just replayed an interview I did with a 21-year-old girl in Perth. It's on Telegram. She was in hospital after her first shot. She had a heart attack in hospital. She'd been in hospital about a month before, suffering from something else, and they tested the heart and they said her heart was perfect. Now she was in having a heart attack. The doctor was telling her it's nothing to do with the jab, and they said you're due for your second shot. She said, I don't want to have my second shot. I've just had a heart attack because of the first. And he said, you got no evidence of that. She goes, your whole ward is full of young people with heart issues right now. And the doctor was saying, what are you saying? And then he said to her, what I think you need to do is see a psychologist.
Yeah.
And now the psychologist she would see would go to her, I think you should take the second shot.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what we would be told.
There's nowhere for her to go for help.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And this is enforcing that. Once again, you know, the gag orders have gone, but here we go. Via a back door, they slither in with this crap.
And why? Because AHPRA is a regulator of professional conduct. It's not a medical authority, and certainly not an authority over our private health decisions. No. Yet this clause blurs that boundary entirely. It allows the board to pressure practitioners into whatever the current immunisation expectation is, even if that expectation later proves wrong, harmful, or politically driven, as we all watched during COVID.
Yeah.
The wording reasonable and effective steps is deliberately vague too.
Yeah.
What does that actually mean? Does it mean disclose your private medical status to an employer? Comply with whatever vaccine schedule the government prefers at the time? Mask, test, isolate? We don't know. And vague obligations can become coercive in practice, as we saw.
Yeah.
This absolutely intrudes into the protected sphere of private life.
Yeah.
And international law is really clear here, isn't it? Like, medical freedom is part of the right to privacy, bodily autonomy, and freedom of conscience.
Yeah.
Regulators have no lawful authority to coerce personal medical choices, personal medical decisions. Maybe we have contraindications. Maybe we've had prior adverse reactions. Maybe we're pregnant. Maybe we have some kind of disability or religious belief. But now, as psychologists who question this within the code, we can now be treated as ethically non-compliant according to the code. So, for instance, doctors who follow their own advice but differ from current expectations risk being seen as problematic. And we know actually that countless of us, professionals, were issued warnings, threatened with dismissal or pressured to take leave, which stopped us providing service during COVID when clients were stressed and needed psychologists the most. So how is that going to protect the public?
And no mention, of course, of what happened during COVID. No mention that, oh, look at that, all of these COVID vaccines.
Absolutely.
It's gone.
Yeah. It's extraordinary. And in section 3 of the code, it talks about being respectful, having a culturally reflective practice for all. We are to challenge our assumptions, to respect diversity, to avoid bias. We're not to unlawfully discriminate. Yet our regulator itself, it appears, won't uphold these values. So let's not get started on and that every vaccine in the world is safe and effective in the first place.
So it appears to be okay to bully and harass if you're a deplorable anti-vax cooker. You know, you can discriminate, you can do anything you like, but if you're every other category is a protected category, and what happened to you, Ros, was and me and others was bullying, out and out bullying.
Yeah.
But I think what you said before about see, there's been no accountability. No one's reviewed. They've sat there and they've done this review of the code of conduct, but they haven't at all reviewed the epic failure, the huge ethical lapses during COVID. You know, the destruction of informed consent, bodily autonomy, human rights. And the board and the profession was complicit in it. And now they're basically doubling down and saying, we want to reach into your mind, put on a brain monitor so that 24 hours a day you think right if you want to be registered in the psychological profession. And overreach much? I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the comment.
And I mean, the world is now traumatized, right?
Yeah. I can show you, because I live on the road. Sandra, I don't know if you do. I live on the road going town to town with Cal and meeting people. A lot of them don't want to talk anymore. They're scared. Like even the place where we're staying now, the caretaker told us she had to have it across the border to pick up the bus she now lives in. She's been vaccinated ever since. And her son, I think he's in his early 30s, he's got significant heart issues now, and he never had heart issues before then. And so these are two people you will never hear about. They're just lost here. But if you go out there, they're everywhere, and they keep it to themselves for some reason because they don't want to be seen as anti-vaxxers. So they don't want to do an interview because the people think I'm an anti-vaxxer, even though the vaccine might even be killing them.
Yeah.
They're still protecting the government.
Yeah, right.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, and psychologists must be hearing this in therapy rooms all over the world.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
And feel tongue-tied, right, about what to say, how to respond. And here we have a code now that, well, I mean, yes, I guess we remain tongue-tied under this code.
Yeah. Yeah, it's staggering, isn't it? I mean, this is a form of communism, really. It truly is, where, you know, Solzhenitsyn times. Don't say this. You say this, we'll sack you. You know what I mean? I think if they get their way, they've built all these prisons for us. They go, okay, off you go. Off you go. 10 years. Re-education. Remember, they used the word re-education. There was a woman, I think she was in the tribunal for the Fair Work Tribunal or something like that. And one of them, this woman came out, magistrate, and said she had issues with what she was doing, and she was removed and sent, and they used the word re-education. I remember them using that word.
They AHPRA have used it here with psychologists, not myself because I was gone, but other ones who put things on social media. They were sent off for social media training, similar to how Jordan Peterson was in is he Canadian or I think he's from
Canadian,
the US, right? I mean, it is. It's. I don't want to sort of belabor a metaphor, but it is absolutely Orwellian. Think like we do, or you need re-education. It's just incredible.
Well, we were given briefing around how to deal with conspiracy theorists in therapy.
The APS put out a whole paper.
If you were a psychologist, say I'm a woman and I come in and I'm in an abusive relationship and I come in to use psychologists for help, and I say my husband hits me every time I don't think like he thinks. He wants me. I have to think like he thinks, or he hits me. What should I do? And what are you guys going to say? Have you thought of maybe getting him to become a psychologist?
Oh, what an analogy.
Yeah, and it's kind of spot on, isn't it?
That's a good one.
Yeah, it's not dissimilar, and I'm going to throw the political hot potato in there, but it's not, dissimilar from the way Muslim women are treated, is it?
No. When we were in early with Dan Andrews, so many of the people in the marches where people have been in abusive relationships are saying this is an abusive relationship, except with the state. This is exactly what it is.
Yeah. And we've always seen in the sort of resistance or freedom of wake, whatever you call them, community, there's a really, really high percentage of people that have their own trauma, whether it's childhood or whatever. And from that, you know, they're used to sort of caregivers being unsafe, so they don't necessarily trust them. Whereas those who have had easy relationships, sort of normal attachment or secure attachment, as we call it, they have no reason, and this all sort of operates unconsciously, to question their caregivers, because surely they're safe. And shouldn't they be? Shouldn't they be? We should be able to trust the government. Ho, ho, ho.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's staggering. I can't believe we're having this conversation in Australia.
Yeah.
You know, in our time. Yeah. It's like something from the 1960s. You know what they used to do? Can you believe it? No wonder the hippies rose up. I mean, and here we are. You know.
Yeah. So with that, can I just move on to a quick point, Michael, which is about another part of the code, and maybe you could move on to the next slide.
Wow, I just got here. I think this comment here from Lindsay is really important. Unfortunately, there are anecdotes of dissenting and vaccine declines being vilified or trivialized by their psychologist.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, dear.
Wow. Because all they want is acknowledgement. At the moment, that's all they want. All the people I interview go, I just want to be acknowledged that I've been injured by this thing. And they won't give it to them.
No.
You know.
That's what everyone wants. You know, ultimately, our sort of number one job as psychologists is when people come to us, it's to validate people's experiences, because they're coming to psychologists because, you know, they're alone. No one's listening to them and they need help. And that's the first piece, is to just validate, you know, whether we agree or not. And Sandra's going to get into this later with their position. It's to validate how they feel. And that is such an incredibly powerful thing. And psychology,
and the opposite is worst.
If
they go there looking for that and told, "Oh, you're an idiot," you know.
Absolutely. It's extraordinary. Yeah.
It's incredibly damaging.
I mean, it changes everything about how we used to practice, you know.
Yeah.
We couldn't have imagined this time, I would say.
You have to become liars.
Yeah.
You have to lie.
That's right.
It. And if this person's in real pain in front of you, you can't help them, because they could be false or a ghost, you know, a ghost client who's there to test to make sure you're actually adhering to the guidelines. A phantom thing. And so you have to lie. That's what they're asking you to do. Do all this training about help, and you're driven there to just help people and sit there in front of them for a good wage and don't help them. Just lie to them.
However, most psychologists do not feel like they're lying, because they're not. They believe that this is the way to look at this issue. You know, this is what we've been taught. This is what we believe. And there's no reason to test this assumption, because vaccines have always been safe and effective. And we've been told these ones were too. So when the client comes in saying they've had a vaccine injury, the automatic response is, well, that can't be right. And so as much as perhaps they'd like to validate the client, they probably feel more like challenging them to try and correct a cognitive distortion.
That's right. And if you think, what really worries me about all of this, I mean, we're sort of 5 years on from COVID. And what's a average career? So if you come out of uni, 25, say, you're going to work to 65 or whatever they put it up to now. So 40 years, we've just lost 5 years. So with this new group of psychologists that are going through uni, and they're being fed all of this nonsense in university, and they will never question it. The same way, Paul, you know, we've talked about it so many times. You, as you said, were sort of, you know, they really pushed you to question the literature. Whereas now you can be damn sure first year med students are just told this is what it is.
Including the peer-reviewed literature. I mean, there was always, we were taught that you had to be skeptical. And that was before we were aware that less than half of it was ever repeatable. In other words, it was nonsense. And that was before we really understood the full degree of contamination by big pharma interests. This is really worrying, because it feels so much like Big Brother to me. It's the thought police reaching into the profession of that's meant to help people with their psychological distress, and it's saying you must gaslight, you must love Big Brother, you must be woke. You must do whatever the government says is, you know, and pay homage to Big Brother in all things. And God forbid you don't, then, and you're a psychologist dealing with that, you can be attacked.
Yeah, definitely. Can I just go into this next one, right? Because this is another part of the new code, and really, you know, it's complete forced ideological compliance. And so, you know, really every ethical code for the last half century, and certainly the former psychological ethical code, you know, draws a clear line between regulating conduct, right? And I still believe that's really important. Don't get me wrong here. You know, psychologists, many of them do bad things. They, you know, abuse or have inappropriate relationships with their clients. But this is now about regulating belief, and it's really crossing a line. So, across many sections in this, it sort of demands that psychologists acknowledge, and recognize political concepts. So the example I'm giving here is systematic racism, colonization, sort of invasion narratives, as if agreement with these positions is an ethical obligation. And really importantly, these are not universally accepted views in Australia. So Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities themselves do not share unified views on these issues. There's no single narrative on colonization, cultural harm, trauma frameworks, etc., or any of these to the degree which should shape clinical practice. And I think ultimately, as soon as you start treating political ideology really as clinical obligations, it's profoundly inappropriate. Because they talk about the Aboriginal situation. Well, what else in the future might the board decide is a compulsory political view, which psychologists must comply with or face gag orders if they voice anything else? And really, it's very dangerous territory when any regulator, whether it's AHPRA or otherwise, start telling professionals what they must believe. Not just how they must behave. And again, it violates a couple of articles, actually 18 and 19 of the ICCPR, which I put up before, intellectual freedom, freedom of conscience, and really the basic human dignity of being allowed to have your own thoughts, your own private view. And once again, and I was going to say this before, Sandra, when you were talking to your point, it's really interesting, isn't it, that the psychologists are sort of failing on so many levels writing this code, yet they use their psychological expertise to put in this just really dodgy, slippery language, around acknowledging, recognizing, responding to. And you can't define those terms. So how does a psychologist prove compliance, and how do they know what level, I suppose, of political agreement is enough? It's like weaponized ambiguity, and this is the really key point here. Ambiguity is always going to favor the regulator. We've got all these different therapeutic modalities we use in psychology, right? And none of them impose values on clients. CBT doesn't, ACT doesn't, psychodynamic therapy absolutely does not. Yet this code requires psychologists to approach every client through this sort of mandated ideological lens. And I think, no democratic profession.
Political instruction. It's a political instruction. It's not psychology.
That's right. Once you've mandated this sort of view that psychologists must hold a particular type of ideology, the next step is easily mandating that psychologists must confront clients about their own political or religious beliefs that don't align with AHPRA's worldview.
Yes. Are we supposed to be correcting our clients? In this fashion, in therapy.
That's right.
I think the intention is good, but forcing beliefs is the exact opposite of reconciliation in any case. It risks further division.
That's right.
And we've made major steps as a nation in ending, or at least, trying to end systemic racism. If you think, of the 1967 referendum that removed constitutional clauses that treated Indigenous people differently, affirming everyone as equal under the Constitution, that was a major step forward. And this kind of regulatory code shouldn't freeze history into the past. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be great sensitivity around these issues, but yes, like you said, Ross, this is an ideological instrument within the code.
Yeah, I'm looking at the National Board's Patient and Consumer Health and Safety Impact Assessment on the Code of Conduct. And it's all about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders.
What did I say? I got kicked off, I think. It must be because I put up Italian for what I thought of AHPRA.
Did you?
Then I got kicked off. Okay, sorry to be a pain. Keep going. Sorry, don't worry about me.
Yeah, my video got frozen before too. So, but the whole impact statement laser focused on that. But like I say, we've just been through 5 years of incredible trauma to the population. It's not like it was just a minor thing. No, it was like the trauma that the children have been put through in the population through the fear programming, the lockdowns, the coercion. This whole document is a monument to what happens when you don't look at what actually happened and you pretend you live in a fairy world of woke DI and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as your focus. Not that they aren't important, but what happened to the children in the last 5 years? What happened to our populations? And you're not supposed to talk about it now because it might not be in a peer-reviewed paper. It seems like it's going to be it's making gaslighting. You're making a psychologist gaslight so that they can maintain pay their mortgage.
You're going to see a lot of suicides in psychologists. They really are, because they're going to feel they're betraying their soul. That's what's going to happen. That's why we see a rise in suicide amongst doctors. I'm sorry, but that's what you're going to see. And the whole country now, I can tell you, because going town to town, Paul's right. The whole country is suffering from PTSD. I get grown men, tradies coming up to me when no one can see them, and they cry because they feel like they were medically raped by the government. I don't get this rarely. I get this a lot, and I get it from all over the place. The whole country is suffering from trauma, so we need our psychologists and we need our counselors. And what are they doing? They're going to remove you.
And in the health professions broadly, we're suffering moral injury. I mean, we can't speak out and we can't share this with our colleagues. It's extremely difficult to talk about. I mean, how do you go and get treatment for concerns around this issue? And just the sheer distress and burnout during the mandates and the lockdowns, it took a toll on the entire workforce.
Yeah, and even the ones that don't.
Families broken up.
That's right. And even the ones, Michael, that sort of don't have awareness about their trauma or sort of don't actually have conscious anger. What I've sort of seen in the last few years is just there's this undercurrent of anger percolating through society. And I mentioned, so my daughter, who works at a tourist place up here, and when she started there maybe 2 years ago, they would have, they started all of these signs everywhere. You go into shops, don't abuse our workers, all of these things. I remember thinking, oh, lighten up. And it was when she started working there and telling me the amount of abuse they cop from customers. She's had hamburgers thrown at her. She's had, elderly women call her, words I can't say on this. And that's what I think. I think those people, they're just so sort of angry and they don't know why. They don't have a target. So they just take it out on the kids. It's a massive problem.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean,
Every phone call you make. You know, if you call any government,
sorry,
I'm just saying, if you call any government department, they start with, if you abuse the staff, we'll cut you off, and then they make you wait for 2 hours until they pick up, and you know, oh, thank you for finally taking my call. You know.
I hear you're frustrated. Yeah, they've got all these bloody catchphrases struggling. Sandra, do you want to go into
Rod, the old adage is the body keeps the score, right? So people are walking around, they don't have necessarily that conscious awareness of why they feel the way they do, but there's been definite harm globally.
You know, it reminds me of Faulty Towers, you know, that episode where he says, don't mention the war, you know.
Yeah.
When I look at this code of conduct, one of the big things is it just doesn't mention the war. It hasn't been impacted by the war. And in the absence of that, in fact, it's worse. It's trying to maintain some of the madness and overreach of the war. In fact, it's trying to stretch it now. I hope there's more backlash, but it's just more proof to me of AHPRA's overreach. That they feel, you know, what's next? Are they going to put sort of caps on psychologists' heads at nighttime to check their dreams? You know, there's going to be some sort of zapping device attached to them if they have wrong think, because we're heading in that direction.
Sandra, do you want to go on, because you had points, I know, in your next slides about the vagueness and
yes.
We need the slides back, Martin.
Code.
Oh yeah, sure. Sorry, I got kicked off.
To put this in context, we had ethical principled guidelines prior to the code of conduct that's coming in. We had the code of ethics, and psychology is both an art and a science, right? And it's about human relationships. So sometimes there needs to be a bit of flexibility in our language. The code of conduct is quite, in some ways, vague in some of its descriptive expectations. And whilst that might have been okay within a code of ethics, in a code of conduct, this vagueness of the language is one of its most dangerous features, in my opinion. So, for example, it's filled with subjective and undefined terms, words like culturally unsafe, proper boundaries, effective steps, reasonable belief, and even could be perceived. And none of these phrases are defined anywhere. None are tied to evidence or measurable standards. And in a regulatory system, vague wording isn't really harmless. It's a license actually for selective enforcement. So the concern is that AHPRA can decide what these words mean on any given day. So the question is, could this potentially punish one practitioner for something and quietly ignore the exact same thing in someone else? Could this power be misused by the regulator? This is not an accusation, and I'm not saying it would always happen, but there's always that potential, because we don't have defined we don't have definitions that we all agree upon. So one one quite concerning aspect of the language in the code is the new no contact for life standard. This is
what does that mean?
This is basically so that you don't see a client in any other capacity for the rest of your life if they've been a client of yours. So in real communities, small towns, shared workplaces, overlapping services, this is absolutely impossible. So what I'm saying is it can only ever be enforced selectively. So the whole drafting of the document and this kind of imposition infantilizes clients as well. Are they so fragile that any misunderstanding constitutes harm? So it dehumanizes us as psychologists. Are we expected to comply with fantasy rules that don't match reality?
Good people
These vague rules give the regulator unfettered discretion and no clarity to us on our protection. So when you combine the punitive environment that we've been feeling, at least since COVID, this vagueness of the language within the code becomes a weapon rather than a safeguard. So I think that is one thing, that shift from the code of ethics to a code of conduct. The language just, it hasn't rolled over. It hasn't changed within the code of conduct. So there's all these loopholes that place practitioners at risk.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
that's concerning a lot of people.
Insane, Sandra. You know, some of these psychologists in these tiny little towns, how are you not going to run into the person?
Right.
I mean, that's
Well,
just
you
insane.
can run into them, but you can't have a social relationship really of any kind. So, you know, fortunately, I must say, I thank my Australian Psychological Society because they have taken the code of conduct and they are now interpreting it for us. And that suggests that we all need actually a lot of PD on this so that we are able to comply with the code of conduct. It is easy to slip up.
What we all need is to actually rise up and call bullshit on this code of conduct.
100%.
Rather than learn sort of manipulative techniques. Because, you know, as you say, Sandra, if you live in, I don't know, Kubapedi or some small town and you're a psychologist there your entire career, over that career you're seeing however many clients a month. You know, after 10 years, that's a good percentage of the town. You know, how do you go about your life? And not only, you know, like, it's just.
You'll be going to church together if they're churchgoers.
Right.
They could be in the same sport team. These towns have, you know, they might have a football team. Everyone's a part of that football team, even as supporters, or a cricket team. All over Australia, that's the way. So it's not actually possible. I understand what they're saying. You know, don't set up romantic relationships with the clients. I understand that, but at the same time too, let's understand we're human beings. And the reason there's 8 billion people on the planet is we like fucking each other. I'm sorry, but we do. And I know we're trying to make it puritanical, like we're above all that, like we're in the D.H. Lawrence time again, where someone's writing Lady Chatterley's Lover. Oh my God, that's terrible, because that was very puritanical time. But we're the children of the 60s or the free love era. I'm sorry, there's 8 billion people on the planet because we kind of like falling in love and getting romantic, and this stuff happens. And I know it's a nice way to be like this, but you're in there, you're sharing your personal feelings with someone. Your clients are going to fall for you. This is an issue. I know it's got an issue. I don't think it's this to make every psychologist go, no, you got to stand off. Basically, it's like going to see a psychologist who's like Nurse Ratched. You know, come on. So I understand this, but all of this just seems to be over-regulation. Like we've got this government bodies that have nothing to do except let's regulate this and let's regulate this and let's regulate this. Just like F off.
And then imagine trying to bring the issue
out of our lives.
Sorry, imagine trying to bring that issue up in supervision. Now, I mean, how would you be honest about something like this if you had feelings? I mean, you want to be able to nut these things out and talk them through. If a practitioner is having some kind of interactions with their client and something's going a little bit more social than therapeutic, you want to be able to kind of address that. But even within the code, you know, now that it's a code of conduct, not a code of ethics, and we can or must inform AHPRA if a peer or a colleague is potentially harming a client or putting a client at risk. You know, where are the boundaries here? Where do we draw the line? How much risk? It's hard to say. So this is, you know, it's difficult.
Can I bring up another point to do with this that you guys might not have thought about? You psychologists could be driven out of business because all I'm meeting everywhere, older people, younger people, everybody's in love with ChatGTP. They call ChatGTP or Grok their best friend. That's their terminology. I've heard numerous people say it. They see it as like free psychology. And they ask it everything. And it's so dangerous because they're not actually talking to a human being. They're talking to something that's looking for patterns and stuff like this and feeding like that. But we interviewed a young homeless guy the other day. He's just living in Nimba now. He doesn't want any part of society. The only friend he has is AI, ChatGTP. And I'm meeting others. There's an old woman on here who offered me her house. She's rescinded it since, you know, but she said her best friend is ChatGTP. I mean, there's just
GPT.
or whatever it is. Yeah, but this is it. And so that's free, accessible 24 hours 7 on their phone whenever. They come to you guys. You guys have got to be like Nurse Ratched, you know, like you got to be cold and this and clinical and just tell them to get vaccinated, whatever the problem is. You know, I'm feeling suicidal. Really? Have you thought of getting the shingles vaccine? That might help. And it's just you literally you're in a competition with something that they can access whenever they want for free, and will tell them exactly what they want to hear. And so there's even economic forces against you here as well. You know, it's harming.
It'll get worse once there's the opportunity for ChatGPT to inappropriately handle you.
It's already happening, Paul. It's already happening. And apparently this problem has become really sort of endemic in China, right? It's not just ChatGPT. There's all these AI girlfriends and boyfriends, right? They become the perfect partner. And in China, you know, where they've got, I don't know, however many million single men because of the one child policy, there's this massive problem of addiction where all these young men have become addicted to these, you know, AI girlfriends because that's all they can get. And, you know, you can laugh, but I mean, how bloody hard.
No, I'm not laughing. It's worse than that.
I know you're not, but, you know,
there's a survey here that came out. I think it was here or America, but I think it was Australia. They did a survey of 18 to 25-year-old men. 45% of them have never asked a woman out or approached a woman. 45%. And so if you've got a guy who's growing up in this world where men are sort of put down, he doesn't feel he has that much confidence. He goes, asks one girl out and she snubs him, and he's got all these sex robots and all this other chat GPT that's going to tell him how great he is and how he feels. Why is he going to bother?
Why bother?
You know, this is the same. You know, this is it. You know, and so yeah, I think it's and I know it sounds funny, but these are very real things. I mean, one of the things of being a man is you've got to ask someone out, and you've got to have them snub you, and you got to do it in a bar with people around. It's annoying, but you get better at it. You know what I mean? But that's a part of being human.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Definitely.
At the end of the day, we all need empathy-driven codes of conduct. I mean, that should be the basis for every code of conduct.
100%. But we're never going to get this, you know, from our current psychological experts. And if I can jump on to my next slide, Michael, in this piece, you know, I can wax lyrical because, you know, being brutally honest, the psychology professions, I'd say around the world, but we're talking about, of course, Australia, they lost, right? They completely lost all moral authority during COVID. And it's not being rhetorical, right? This was the lived experience for all Australians. You know, psychologists are the people trained to understand coercion, mass anxiety, groupthink, trauma, ethical boundaries, and they either remained silent or they actively participated in what I think it's fair to say was some of the most psychologically destructive public policies in living history. You know, and if we go to the children, because that was what who I spoke out about, and always who I'm, you know, still trying to champion. Child psychologists, developmental psychologists, school counselors, they knew, right? There's never been a piece of developmental peer-reviewed research, you know, that would say social isolation or prolonged fear messaging, masking in classrooms, or closing schools was going to be psychologically safe. Yet these harms were raised by those of us who understood the evidence, and AHPRA and the psych boards attacked the whistleblowers instead of the problem. You know, myself and a small handful of other psychs in Australia were the only ones who spoke up publicly about this. You know, and I actually ran it, sort of evolved around me as a result of that first video I made, a support group for psychologists, you know, practitioners, and also the public. And all of them knew, yet were too scared to speak out. We had, I think, you know, come through the doors during that period, about 450 mental health practitioners, psychologists, psychiatrists, counsellors. About 99% of them probably were Australian. You know, and they would come in weeping about the catastrophes they were seeing, and also the bullying they were getting from their colleagues because they weren't going along with the group thing. And of course, they were too scared to speak up publicly due to those AHPRA gag orders, warning of disciplinary action if they spoke out. And of course, we've seen, it was not a catastrophe. And for me, this is such a key point. Psychologists ultimately, whether they were practicing clinical or whether they were part of the sort of, you know, government regulatory framework, they became the enforcers of this state narrative instead of doing what they should do, which is being the guardians of ethics and mental health. You know, psychology should, I mean, it was the best placed bloody profession during COVID to act as a check on power. But instead they actually functioned as like this pit bull dog as amplifiers for the power. They didn't challenge coercion. Coercion is a psychological concept. They helped it. They didn't, you know, defend freedom and autonomy. They sort of eroded it. And instead of upholding the codes of ethics, they sort of weaponized it against dissenters. And for me, I suppose if there are any psychologists watching this, you know, especially those in governance positions who wrote this new code, and they'll be watching this. You know, I don't know if Facebook is still live. I'm surprised.
Yeah, it is surprising. Telegram went out. We lost Telegram. we get the rest. I just want to say, you know, Kat Tilley.
No.
I know Paul is. You're friends with Kat Tilley, Paul?
Yes.
Tilly Cat. She told me when she went to her psychologist early on, I remember because she used to come on the show, her psychologist said to her, "Are you getting the jibby jab?" And she said, no. She goes, and the psychologist said, "Well, you have to." And Kat said, "Why?" He said, "Otherwise you'll become a second-class citizen." That's what the psychologist said.
Yeah, we heard again and again from members of the public who had spoken to their doctors and said they didn't want the jab, and the doctor's answers were, "You need to go and see a psychologist." I mean, it was so fucked up. You know, really, yeah, you know, any psychologist, you can't preside, I suppose, over this was the worst psychological dereliction of duty in our country's history and the world's history. And you can't then turn around and demand the right to regulate speech, belief, conscience. I mean, it's a joke. You know, you don't get to be silent when children and the rest of the community are being seriously harmed. That was so obvious. You know, any competent psychologist should have seen that. You know, you don't get to ignore your ethical duties, you know, of the biggest psychological event in history and then turn around and rewrite the rules to punish those who spoke out. And I think, interestingly, you know, to me, to any psychologist that's thinking clearly, what's actually happened in the last 5 years should be, you know, this enormously potent, fruitful scope for psychological examination into the madness that took place. To, you know, to acknowledge mistakes were made, because we all made mistakes. I made mistakes, you know, and I think importantly, you know, true courage is that ability to put your hand up and go, "I fucked up," right?
Yeah.
But instead,
and you grow.
Right? You grow. That's how you grow. But instead, AHPRA turns around and attempts to sort of further muzzle hardworking, good people, you know, decent psychological practitioners. You know, it comes from humility. You've got to analyze the past. But instead, what we've ended up with is these sort of so-called experts, whoever they are, writing these sorts of codes. And, you know, they're actually quite childish. They're psychologically childish because they're basically slamming their fists down to keep their own egos, "I'm right," intact. And, you know, I want to say, I think it's important I say, because some people might think, "Oh, well, you know, you're just feeling vengeful because you lost your license." Not at all. You know, this is about legitimacy. This is about, you know, there's a basic principle that moral authority must be earned. You don't just assume it. And psychology, unquestionably, in my mind, didn't earn it during COVID. You know, it abandoned clients, it abandoned ethics, and to me, it lost all credibility. So, you know, this new code sort of comes in and tries to position the board as the ultimate purveyor of wisdom, of acceptable beliefs, acceptable science. And I think we all have a right to say, you've lost that privilege. You know, who are you to be writing these?
Well, they're not fulfilling their new code either. I mean, I've got it up here at 10.2, assessing other practitioners. It's an important part of making sure the highest standard of conduct is achieved. Effective practice includes you are honest, objective, constructive. Now, where I get a bit, I don't understand, I'm not a psychologist, culturally safe and reflective, that sounds a bit wanky to me. But honest, objective, constructive, you know, accurate, justifiable. You know, you were talking about the harms earlier, Roz. I saw journals where they had studied, for instance, children born during lockdown in that critical time when everyone was being masked, and the devastating effect on IQ. There was a Rhode Island study. So there was peer-reviewed psychological research saying, holy shit, we are harming the population, and it's just they have to look at what happened the last 5 years, otherwise they have no legitimacy. And the same thing that happened to all the other branches of the health profession. While we've got this Dobbin wrong thinking practitioner, Health Complaints Commission, which allows them to choose the scope of who they want to attack for wrongthink. This system is broken. This system is corrupt. They talk about bullying, but they don't see it's built to bully on behest of vested interests and to keep the government line and the corporate line and the globalist line as paramount. And they call it stakeholder, and I just see Klaus Schwab there,
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I agree. I have to say that from another point of view, it's easy to attack AHPRA and the people doing this, but surely to every psychologist watching here, you now are on Mount Sinai, and the devil is asking you a question. You can have your mortgage, you can have your wage, you can have your status, and your pay packet is this. You've just got to do this. You just got to betray the very reason why you became a psychologist. So you really have to ask yourself, all the psychologists out there, why did you want to be a psychologist? Was it just to be obedient to AHPRA and sit there quietly as people are suffering in front of you and not help them because you're going to break the guidelines, or you did it to help people? And if you all got together and said we did it to help people, you could form your own union and you could write your mantra of what you're going to do on union on the end of your finger here like this and send it to AHPRA as if to go, screw you. We're Australians. The country needs help. F off. And this is what we have to do. There's
but
more
the problem
of you
is that a lot of
small group.
sorry to interrupt you.
But we're just too obedient.
Yeah, but I honestly think that people are not, they're not making the choice necessarily to, pay their mortgage in favor of not protecting children, etc. Like, they're not making that conscious choice at all. I honestly believe that the majority of our profession still do not see this problem the way we see it. The censorship has been so remarkably effective. And I mean, to this day, 5 years on, I am still sometimes second guessing myself, thinking, how could this be? The incredulity you go through. It's if you're a little bit removed from it too, if you weren't affected by the mandates, if you didn't have a vaccine exemption ignored, etc., if you didn't lose your job, how much of this would you really have processed? So in defense of the many colleagues I have, I would just say that they may listen to us and think, yeah, they may be right, there's a point there, but honestly, would this really be as bad as they're saying? Would this, with vaccines have been around for decades and decades, they've always been safe and effective. Are they really telling us the truth? There's so many peer-reviewed journals saying it's perfectly safe. I mean, what are these guys on about? Could the censorship be really that bad? Isn't this a bit crazy talk? I honestly think that people are in that space, and what we're saying is a bit foreign.
Sandra, you know that safe and effective comes up very often in this code of conduct. It is the most safe and effective code of conduct I've ever seen.
It's a very safe and effective comment.
Yeah.
It's had such a psychological effect on the listener that we just shut down and believe it.
And that's my problem. That's one of my problems with this code of conduct, because I've learned that when the authorities at B tell me if something is safe and effective, that is two lies. And I have a suspicion that it's the same here with this code of conduct.
Yeah.
But
Just
Again, in
about
their
vaccines,
defense,
though,
I
this
honestly
isn't
think
just
that
about-
most people are just not seeing this in this way. They do not see this as bullying. They see this as quite righteous. They see this as presenting the truth. They see this as protecting the public from people who, you know, may cause them to stray into alternative medicines or things and not get proper treatment. You know, they're seeing this as necessary.
Can I just respond to one of the comments I've seen from Julie Chumley, if that's how you pronounce her name? She says, if a psychologist can't see through this bullshit, they're not fit for the job, obviously. And, you know, part of me, there's two parts to why psychologists may not be getting involved. One, of course, is the gag orders just terrifying people, which is why we did the Lighthouse Declaration, Paul, myself, and Rob Brennan, and we'll hopefully put a link into that. But the other one that's really struck me is exactly what Julie said, because if you're a psychologist and you've missed this psyop, you've missed all the media manipulation, all of the nudging, all of the, you know, behavioral information sort of technology they used, then surely, by definition, you're professionally incompetent. Right. And again, with this, you know, that's what AHPRA is displaying, because if they didn't see it, they're either malevolent or incompetent or both. What else can they be?
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree that there's a competence issue here. However, this is a social psychology subject, and so many people are trained in counselling therapies and, you know, psychopathology and brain science, and this is social coercion psychology, and it's just something we've never really experienced before on this scale. We are drip fed kind of manipulation all the time in advertising, and so you just become sort of attuned and compliant to it, and then a crisis occurs and you think, right, well, I better do my bit and get vaccinated. I must admit, I do agree with you, because when I was watching the 11 a.m. reports on the COVID vaccine death, the COVID infection death
mass.
Right, the death stats every morning, I was thinking, gosh, why would the Premier be getting up and telling us all these things that absolutely terrify us? And I thought, wait a minute, what sort of government does this? And it was at that moment, and I can almost just remember the day and the hour that the penny dropped. And I thought, wait a minute, I don't feel right about this. I'm just going to kind of step back from the whole emotion of this and analyze this objectively. And when I had to put emotion to the side and say, no matter how crazy the alternate view is, no matter how conspiratorial, and I had never really heard of conspiracy theories. I thought that whether Elvis was dead or not was the conspiracy. You know, I had not gone into conspiracy theory world. And so I had no kind of, you know, back-end narrative, but I just knew that something just didn't feel right. And I must admit that I think there must be other people, and the more that we talk about it, the more that we raise that consciousness, because people sort of think, oh yeah, maybe, but oh no, it couldn't be, because it's just too crazy to believe an alternative.
Can I put a theory to you, Sandra? There's a guy now on our coast. He calls the surveillance surveillance. And we've been talking and saying, even though we have a democracy where we grow up where we're all free, we've actually the ancestors of people who lived under lords and kings, and we had no say. And I do wonder if a lot of Australians, they treat the government like a lord. You know, they go, oh, they've just brought in this law. You have to have 2 hands, and everybody does it. And everyone goes, hey, hang on. You're supposed to just clean the bins, fix the roads, and F off out of it. They don't think that way. And so even now with this digital ID, there's so many people going, oh, well, the lords have spoken. They haven't known to say those terms, but they're acting like serfs, like they have no power to stop this.
Yeah.
You know, the Victorian Parliament brought in the voice after Australia said no. There's no huge outcry against Australia going, hey, mate, we said no. They just do it. You know what I mean? And so I'm wondering if something in it, Lee, who gets the pharmacist from, he calls it learned helplessness. And that these people now have lost their power in the last 5 years. And a lot of it comes down to the fact that they were forced to take something they didn't want to take in their body and were broken. It was just broken by it. They did. I remember Gardy used to come on, this major lawyer. He's so tough. He talks to cops and everything. He took it and he said he was sobbing, bawling his eyes out as he was taking it. And it's broke him and he feels sick. This is breaking them. You know what I mean? So I wonder if that's it. And they don't have a time to get over that or deal with it. And now they're just going, now you're going to do this, and now you're going to do this. It's a tragedy. It's a modern tragedy. They have
you go through the stages of grief.
People who are being governed by these few little pricks, you know, and they're just getting away with it. That's the truth. Let's be honest. You know, the sanctimonious.
Well, people are broken. People are broken.
Yeah, they are.
They are in grief and in denial. So many people. You know, it's too hard to face this. Really.
Yeah. And when you can't speak to anybody because nobody wants to talk to you, so you've got to keep it in. Pure communism. You interview anyone who's under communism, that's what they say. You go out in society with a face like this. And you keep everything you're thinking inside, everything. And you talk to only your very, very closest friends. And so you've got all these people suffering. Like, this is one of the stories we heard on the road the other day. 2 stories, actually. And Roz, it'll hit you home. Some girl finally brought up the fact amongst her mates and the mates' mothers that she was having fertility problems. And there was about 20 young girls there. Every single one of them had fertility problems. And then a few days ago, I was talking to someone, I can't remember who, and they were talking about their son and his mates, and they'd had their sperm tested for some reason. They're supposed to have thousands and thousands. Their average was 20 amongst them. That's it. But they keep it silent. Another thing happened in Perth. I remember when I was there, some young guy who had myocarditis really badly. He finally decided to put it up on Insta, and he expected to get attacked like crazy. Instead, he had all these young men coming out saying, I've got the same, I've got the same.
Wow.
So how they're controlling this is with the silence, the fear of what other people will think. Anti-vaxxer, cooker, sovereign citizen. You one of those, one of those will turn against you. Shut up. Shut up. That's why.
That's really heartening, though, that he had that really positive validation on Insta. And hopefully they're setting up a group, because as we saw with the bloody fertility roundtable we did, it was smacked down and crushed. Like nothing we've ever done before. But I was just going to mention comment on what you were saying about the sort of serfs, lords system. One of the interviews I heard really early on, probably 2021, 2022, was RFK Jr. I had no idea who he was at the time. Someone sent it to me and said, you have to watch this. And he stood up and he was saying that what we're experiencing now, and we still are, is sort of isomorphically, so same pattern as there were 2 wars. I don't know which one, the American Revolutionary War or the American Civil War, right? And he said that the difficulty we have now is back then, people's houses were being burnt down, people's wives were being raped. So everyone picked up their bloody pitchforks and went for it, right? People, the other thing we've got at the moment is people, we're in this really sort of self-focused world in the West. Everyone's really looking at what's going on in their lives rather than the greater good. And he said, back then people were willing to die for the cause, but no one is now. and there's no pain. Everyone's sitting there watching Netflix. They're, you know, ordering home delivery, ordering home beer delivery, and they might see this stuff and go, "Oh yeah, that's crap," on X, or like a Facebook post, but they're not getting off their arse. And that is the bit, you know, I'm sure Paul, Michael, you know, Sandra, all of this, we're tired. Like, this is 5 years on.
Man.
You know, we need people to just get off their asses and do
We've
something.
all lost so much, but the pain's coming, Roz. The financial there's pain coming, and so we've got to see what they do. I'm hoping that the digital ID goes through, and that finally people, every time they got a facial recognition, because they did it in Louisiana, they brought it in Louisiana, and 80% of the internet business, or most of the internet businesses lost 80% of their customers because people could not be bothered to log in. So there's going to be huge economic pain, because they can't be bothered. Huge economic pain, and stuff like this. And not want to go. I think there'll be a kickback. Well, I hope. I hope. You know. Yeah. And look at us. Look at us. What they do to all of us. Look at you, Roz. You must be a great psychologist. I'd love to come and see you, just so you can tell me I'm nuts. But there's going to be still there, and now you're going to be driving Ubers or something. It's insane. We don't benefit from it economically. You know, look at who was that great doctor we had on, Teo. He's in China now.
Charlie Teo.
How could we possibly give up Charlie?
Yeah,
there were so many people on that interview that were saying, my son is only alive because of him. Not one, loads. All these people were coming in. My daughter's only alive because of him. And we've let him go because he doesn't jump through the hoop. You know?
Michael, we become unmoored from ethics, and we become unmoored from truth. And there will be consequences, you know. Like you're saying, the financial, I'm seeing that. That's starting to kick off. So you know, COVID wasn't about health. It was much more about compliance and control, and this is more of the same, and it's disgusting. And maybe they'll just keep going until everyone's teeth are kicked in, or maybe people will. Maybe some people will spit out their remaining teeth and say, "No, I'm not playing anymore." And if enough people find alternatives, stop playing in their play box, like you were saying in Louisiana, because that's all they care about, whether or not they can make money off us while they're busy killing us and controlling us. So if we move out of their system, if we don't comply, that will affect their bottom line. That's the only thing they care about. They don't care about. So you know, I don't have the answers yet. I think we've been pointing to them for a few years, but I think as it gets funkier, as life finally gets perhaps a bit harder, people will start to see. And it wasn't about, like I say, it wasn't about COVID. It was about the overreach. It was about the lies. It was about the insanity. It was about the cruelty, you know. And you can pretend that it didn't happen, but I think people are starting to understand that that's what happened. And this code is brushing it and actually taking it a little bit further. And like I said before, I'm worried about, because this comes down to shades of COVID vaccine hesitancy is a disease. It's a mental illness. You know, this is, and then you start to attack consent in a very, very dangerous way. So that's why it was important to hear from you guys tonight about what's happening.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
With psychology, because it's a new vector. It opens potential vector of attack, and the risks continue until we face what happened in the last 5 years, and And this document doesn't do that, not even close.
The document reminds me of George Orwell's. He talks about the future. Think of a boot on man. Well, it's a metaphorical boot.
It is.
You know, the boot is there silencing you. You can't talk. You can only say these things. That's a metaphorical boot on your face. This is what we're doing. You know?
Yeah.
Can I just come back to what you said before, Paul, just about, you said the financial interest in this. I think it goes a lot further, and maybe Sandra, if you want to go on next to, because you were going to talk about sort of who wrote this code, right? Because I think it's actually a deeply psychological piece for most people. Most people are brought up, sadly, and I think a lot of that sort of post-World War II legacy, to really struggle with admitting they're wrong. And it's this, you know, all resources unconsciously are going towards keeping their ego intact, i.e. keeping their argument intact. And this is, you know, very much what AHPRA is doing. They haven't been able, all the psych boards and, you know, all the various psychological professional bodies, to actually stop and reflect and put their hands up and go, okay, we fucked up, right? That's okay. That's good. Good. But, you know, let's learn from this. And how are we going to make sure this never happens again? But they haven't. They've just, let's come down harder, right? And so, you know, Sandra, do you want to speak about kind of who wrote this code? Because that was an interesting piece we wanted to look into.
Do you need another slide for that?
I think there is one more, one or two. I think, it strikes me that across the health professions, we have deferred our expertise to another authority, and we've lost confidence, I think, as individuals and as a collective in our own competency. And so we're almost like trained seals looking to other experts to tell us what is the truth, what is the best evidence-based practice. So in terms of, you know, who wrote the code, it appears that it was written by bureaucrats, not psychologists. Nonetheless, it was a so-called expert panel chosen by the Psych Board of Australia. So for a start, the Psych Board members, they are mostly psychologists. I think there are 10 psychologists and maybe 2 community members on the Psych Board, but they're appointed by health ministers. So they're not elected by us, and they are in paid roles. So after a 3-year term, that position on the board might be extended, might not be. So it makes you wonder about political and government agenda and influence here. So we don't actually know who the experts were on the panel either. But we do know that psychologists within the community were consulted. However, they seem to have been consulted last, not they weren't the forerunners of they didn't design the code of conduct themselves. But nonetheless, there was a public consultation exercise, and they received around 133 or so submissions containing a lengthy list of concerns. So it makes you wonder then, was there any impact analysis, for example, done regarding some of those very contentious sections of the code? We have no clear way to verify what the final version of the code actually reflects either. Is it actually finally reflective of public input? So we don't know. The problem here is that the regulators are unregulated, that we have deferred our competence to them. So
it certainly
yeah.
sounds like bureaucrats. When you read through it, it's effective risk management includes you practice cultural safety and culturally reflective practice as detailed under principles 2 and 3. That's the important. Look, I agree with some of the things like 7.1H. It says support practitioners and colleagues who raise objectively valid concerns about the safety of clients and others. Well, from my viewpoint, that's all you were doing, Roz. That's all I was doing. They're not following their own code because when there is objective evidence that harm has been done, and they're not supporting. They're bullying and harassing and conducting vexatious complaints. And by having the document vague and poorly defined, it just allows more of the same.
Yes. It's interesting timing too. It's come into kind of draft form since 2023. The timing's uncanny straight after COVID, right? And we had 50 years or whatever, I don't know. We had many years of practice where we were not bound to this code. And we we talk within the APS about the beginnings of the society and the collegiality. And then, we had an APS code of ethics that stood us it served us well for a very long time. And this new code of conduct seems to have been adapted from some sort of medical model, or it's a generic kind of code of conduct that has just been then adapted for psychology. So many of the provisions within it are actually outside our profession entirely. So they were never tested in real world psychological practice. We are very different from medical model clinicians. We work in many overlapping services and culturally diverse settings, and one psychologist's work may differ markedly from another psychologist's work, which may not be so obvious in, say, a comparison like nursing. So, yeah, when this code goes live tomorrow, this is our
morning.
Yeah, this is our.
I've got this Vera Tandilic. I said that right. Sorry if I. Thank you for your timely, important presentation. As a psychotherapist, I'm quite horrified on a microcosmic level professionally and a macrocosmic level as an Australian. So, so this goes live tomorrow. Wow.
Yeah, it's going to have real power. It's really. Yeah.
Sandra, can I just speak? Like you sent me this timeline of the consultation process. Can I just talk to that a bit? Because I think it's important for people to realise. So June 2023, right? This is when the draft code was released for public consultation. And it was sent to over 100,000. I didn't know there were that many registered psychs. They sent the draft code, an online submission portal. Then they had all these webinars, Q&As, etc., etc. August 2023 closed the consultation period. And then this is, this is the really upsetting piece for me, because I heard from another psychologist, there's something called the AHPRA. So it's a sort of more alt psych, I suppose, association, and they said that there were over 6,000 posts on their boards, all screaming about this new code. And there were huge amounts of, and I've read some of them, of people saying, exactly what we've been talking about tonight. So in November 2024, AHPRA came back and said they had seen, they've made their refinements, and all they changed, right? Minor language, some definitions, expanded transitional guidance. But the key pieces, these key, really important sort of structural, I suppose, elements, freedom of speech, speech regulation, political beliefs, all remained as they were. So it was just, again, it's just optics, right? Oh, yes, we'll go and ask everyone. And, millions, millions of dollars put into going out and doing all of that, kind of greenwashing for nothing.
Yeah. And I personally have no doubt that the experts, many of them at least on the panel, felt that this was a timely introduction of the code, that there did need to be more regulation after COVID, that they did need to quiet dissenting voices that didn't adhere to peer-reviewed research. So, and here we are. I mean, we've got a long way to go with these discussions, because look at what we're dealing with. We're at the eve, nearly 10 p.m. and tomorrow is the beginning of our new world in psychology.
Wow. We have a saying on the show that this will all end when the fat lady sings. But unfortunately, we're in an obesity epidemic. So, Is that it? That's the last one?
This is the last slide.
It's staggering.
Yeah.
Staggering.
Yeah.
It's. Thank you for hosting us.
Maybe we have to go here for people to actually see it and just, I don't know, maybe I interviewed this Romanian woman once, and she was 17. She said to her parents, why do we live like this? Why don't we have freedom? Why don't we have it? And the parents go, oh, what can you do? What can you do? But she actually left Romania. She escaped and came to Australia. And she's a huge freedom fighter now because she says, I've seen this. And people give in. Because the USSR wasn't built with a rifle pointed at people. It was built around compliant people who just couldn't be bothered to stand up. And that's exactly what's happening now. And people, the only freedom they want is the freedom to endure. That's it. And this is what we have to change. We have to remind people how effing wonderful it is to be a human being, but you can only really enjoy the total gift of being a human being with freedom of speech, the other freedom of choice, freedom. You need these freedoms to realize how magnificent you are. This is just a way of going into the darkness. It's nuts. Nuts. Ladies, I admire Sandra. You did excellently. I know how brave you had to be to do this. We are AHPRA's favorite show. And
they do love us.
They do love us. Yeah. But and Roz, you're amazing, Roz. You're amazing. You really are. You are standalone. You're so tough. And I know how tough you've been doing it. But it really is. And Paul, well, I just love you. It's like a bro romance thing going on. Can we plug the lighthouse before we go on? And the signing of the lighthouse.
Yes.
Well,
which I've signed under duress.
No, there's no duress. Look, if you believe in that censorship should end, informed consent should be maintained, in other words, tell the truth. Bodily autonomy should be protected, and that your practitioner should be able to tell the truth without intrusion from outside forces that aren't necessarily in the best interest of your patient or client. You don't have to be a doctor or a health professional. Go to lighthousedeclaration.org and sign the declaration.
Yeah, please do. It takes 30 seconds. And yeah, it's really helpful for us to keep
and
getting
join
this.
tens of thousands of people all over the world who've signed.
That's right.
Wow, I
Yeah.
just put it in to Google it. Here it is here. And the first one that comes up, when you click the Lighthouse Declaration, it goes to a movie. It's got nothing to do with
Really?
you. Yeah,
Can
just
you?
check.
Are you? I can't
Yep.
see screen.
So
Are you
I've just put up here now. Let's see. So there it is there, the Lighthouse Declaration. So
Right.
LighthouseDeclaration.org.
Cape Byron Lighthouse.
No. Lighthouse.
LighthouseDeclaration.org, Michael. Put that in.
It's
That's
not
it.
.org.
It's up the bottom. But watch this. Watch this.
Oh,
Just watch this here. Window. Where is it? I can't see it now.
Spelled?
I've
Okay,
just
so
checked. The website's fine.
so they're
Yeah,
here. See
the
that one
website's
Cape Byron Lighthouse Declaration? Watch this. Click on it.
Born.
Goes to a movie.
Okay.
Isn't that strange? IMBD for some reason.
Born out of unjust professional. I think I might want to watch
Unless
that.
someone's made a movie
Yeah.
about you guys. Yeah. But we should go out with hope. Sandra, a very young woman, said to me when I first started doing speeches in Melbourne, she said, you've got a moral obligation not to sell hopelessness, no matter how tight its grip. Now, what I feel is that the whole world, our whole universe, especially this planet, is built on depression and happiness, which is the night and the dawn, and that we are going into darkness now, but there is always a dawn. And who knows,
Absolutely.
we might go through this and we might go, nah, because we're all living memories of a time when we didn't have this much regulation. There wasn't a camera in your face constantly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You had a
Yeah.
freedom, and we are we are the walking museums of that. And so I think if we keep talking and we keep being defiant, because from the start, the Polish people, the Romanians, the Hungarians, all of these people said to me, there's the lesson they learned through decades of pain. You cannot comply your way out of this. You can't comply. You must defy. Yeah. So I
yes,
admire
it's people
you,
in
Sandra,
those cultures that know what to look for, and they've been aware for a while. So many people in those cultures.
Oh, the Polish are great. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I do think we are moving through from darkness to light. I totally agree.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which
Yeah,
means
and I
it's a
honestly
journey.
think that most people have great intention. So, and at the end of the day, it's the heart that leads.
Yeah. Yeah.
The heart is a map that the mind can't read. There you go. So we're going to go out with The Lucky Country. This was this is one of the songs, so we'll go out with this. The end line goes, and we all owe so much money, but to who we're not quite sure. So instead, we just keep running, a head down, we just keep running along our fading golden shores. And that's where we are right now, a country of people in denial, and it's not going to fix it. Good night, ladies. I wish you the best.
Night.
Feel free to come back on. Roz, stay behind just for a sec. I just got one thing to tell you after the show. Okay?
Yep.
See you guys. See you next week, Paul. The Lucky Country.
When I met Jesus Christ, he was almost 10 years old, and he was helping his mother push a trolley full of all they owned. And because they couldn't find an inn they could get in, they were heading to the city and leaving Bethlehem. Couldn't you perform a